Nigeria is proceeding with plans for a coastal highway from Lagos to Calabar, despite some controversy about the billion-naira project. Demolitions have already begun on the road project's right-of-way. A major issue surrounding the highway is the existence of an approved environmental impact assessment. Our environmental correspondent, Leila Johnson-Salami, asked the Minister of Works, David Umahi, about this assessment at a stakeholders meeting. Take a look.
The EIA Act of 1992 states that an EIA must be approved by the Federal Ministry of Environment before the commencement of any project, unless an exemption has been given. It's not done so.
There is preliminary approval, there is final approval.
Has an exemption been given? And if so, if you have the preliminary approval...
Exemption of what?
For the project to start without the final approval. If you have the preliminary approval, can this be shared with the public?
We are following due process.
So can we have a copy of the preliminary approval?
It is federal government that gives the approval. It's not you.
So can we have a copy of the preliminary approval?
We have the approval.
And you can make that public to the media?
Everything in order.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're joined now by Rise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi to make sense of that. First of all, let's start talking about the questions she asked before we delve into some other matters, because there are other matters. Sure. And it has to do with the EIA, and the first things first. And she wanted to find out if these have been done, knowing full well that there's been complaints from a lot of people, from communities, from people who have claimed that their ancestral homes will be touched, and most importantly, businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses on the stretch of that part of the road. So how important would that answer have been to us as a people?
Well, I think first, the question she asks is a practical question and nothing controversial about it, reinforced by the Constitution itself, from Section 14, Section 20, the Charter, the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, Section 24, and very specifically, the Environmental Impact Assessment Act of 1992. And it has a long history. I mean, even the United Nations Convention on Nigeria signed up to the notion of environmental impact and, big projects. So the act is very specific that, look, every project, local government, private sector, federal, state, explicitly stated, must obtain an EIA report. And what that means is that if you want to initiate any project that has significant impact, you have to do scoping. And by the way, we've got a system that the scoping was actually scheduled a few days ago. So that scoping gives opportunity to identify the biophysical and other risks that that project can entail, and then indicate the impact of those and establish mitigations you want to carry out, okay, remediation, mitigation to reduce those impacts. And that's what submitted to the Minister of Environment. The Minister of Environment will review them, call a consultation of experts, other government official departments, experts, and then affected individual stakeholders. So that public consultation is where your preliminary report is workshopped, kind of, to see that those risks are properly identified, the mitigation plans are properly put in place, and remediations you propose. And even if they cannot be remediated, you have a sense of the losses you're going to make down the road. So after that, that's what they now, if they're satisfied, they will probably give you, they'll give you final, preliminary, maybe ask you to go and do correction. Preliminary approval says, this is fine, but there are a few things you need to do. But the law is specific, clear. You can't commence in any form until you get that approval. And by the way, the so-called exemption is limited. Exemption only relates to three basic things. One is under emergency, war, whatever. Second is where there's no de minimis, very little impact or none at all. For example, electricity lines and things like that, the wave it. And then thirdly, for health pandemics, health crisis, emergency, like when we're under the COVID-19 period, government could exempt, but that was an exemption itself. So clearly, the project most have started without that final approval. And she's right. The Arise News correspondent was actually right. This is not like government pick a phone and call. I mean, the minister reduced it to maybe 12th century Napoleon, the state. Modern government is moved from government to governance. So you're going to deal with framework, network, rules and procedure. And these rules bind government. Every rule the government makes binds government. So the notion that is government, that's not the point. It's the Ministry of Environment, not even government, not the presidency. It must be the Ministry of Environment that handles that. We used to have FEPA, Federal Environmental Protection Agency, which has now been subsumed. We now have NESRA. So most of the environmental issues have been stipulated and streamlined on who has the capacity to detail, to approve. Just like the petroleum, under the Petroleum Act before. The approver is not the president. It's the Minister of Petroleum. Yes. And today it is either the commission or the agency, depending on what I'm dealing with.
And so
offshore,
Dr. Sam, we don't know if the government has the preliminary approval, final approval, or an exception to commence.
Most likely they don't have, because if they had asked for scoping, that's the beginning of process. Yeah.
Because you're right, because I hate to speculate, and I also would say Dave Umahi is one of Nigeria's finest engineers. He understands what you just highlighted, so he should know the first things first. So it doesn't look.
This is not engineering. This is public policy. I mean, oftentimes say he's a good engineer, but you may not understand. He didn't show. I want to be
understanding.
He didn't show understanding of basic governance. We're talking about the rules. I mean, how can you say it's government? It's not you. Which government? It's government that's put the rule. So it seems to me, if you ask me honestly, that David Umahi may be a finance engineer, maybe the guy who created the world, but he didn't show preliminary, most rudimentary knowledge of public governance. That government itself makes this law. And by the way, this EIA is not just some kind of abstract thinking.
Were you expecting him to come with a copy of the EIA there?
To tell you simple that we've got it,
or we don't have it, exactly.
Or we don't have it. So to say, what's a business? This is government. Who does it? Who is government? The same government says, and by the way, let's not be abstract here. The reason for doing environmental impact assessment comes from a long history. I mean, if you look at the history of the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, presumption of a technology and its impact. First, project can fail. Second, they can even we can be submerged, basically. You're dealing with a coastal road. This is very important. The impact on the environment. Today, there are speculations that even some of the Lagos coastal district might be in risk. So why do we do just like that? Why do we do impact assessment? It's also a matter of social life systems, cultural life system. The Nigerian, the fundamental directive objective of state policy, chapter 2, talks about preserving our environment, air pollution. So why do we ask factories? I'll give you an example. When I was chairman of FNEC, we don't license you without an EIA from Minister of Environment. So we don't even create it ourselves. We have engineers who are fellows. We still ask you to go to the ministry because they have a statutory mandate and procedure.
I think so that we don't still run on speculation, because it got to a point later, finally rounded up by saying that means if we ask for it, we'll get it. And yes. So
but he didn't say yes. He said everything is in order.
Everything is in order.
That's not a yes.
No,
because we don't have it yet.
That's more like a yes.
No, it's not.
Well, if it's yes, first, why did you...
When you say everything is in order...
No, see the point. We're not here. We are here for public interest.
Yeah.
So, government has simple ways. We'll have it. I mean, we're not going to compel you. So, if when she asks a question, say, yes, I know, we've got it. We have it. First, he says, you wouldn't know, it's government. I mean, what's the point? But the key point we're saying here, if they have it, good for it. If they don't have it, it's wrong to commence project without it. And at this point, you see, that's why I use the word governance. Governance is not a mystery. It's about, as Judge always says, telling people the truth. We have it. This is it. Every document, and by the way, that's the point I'm making. This is not something done in secret. This is not a memo to government. This is public consultation, because the people are going to pay now, for example, is public. Also, the EIA procedure requires public consultation. Yes. And by the way, in the oil and gas sector, there have been Supreme Court cases where the Supreme Court has affirmed the right of NGOs to intervene to say that you didn't carry out EIA. This is not a new thing. I was involved in environmental struggle years ago. We used to do this challenge LNG, all their projects. You go there, again, Minister of Justice, Minister of Environment, we put it on a billboard for people for experts, copy them to come and see the narrative of risk and mitigation the government is presenting.
By everything is in order?
Everything is a market tale. I mean, what's everything in order? Simple question. Do you have, it says we follow due process. Look, let's forget this argument. I know the governor, even as governor, former governor, is in this, this big man tale. Look, governance is about the people. It's not about superiority. Simple. The lady asked the question professionally, very clear question. Do you have exemptions, sir? Yes, we have. Have you got this? We've got it, or we've not got it.
Or we don't. Or we're in
There's
the
no
process.
prosecution there. Simple.
Dr. Sam, I think let's just talk about some of the risks and dangers of commencing such a project without this assessment.
First, this is a major project. I remember as a graduate student at Harvard, when we did the big dig, Massachusetts, it took years, overall on cost, damage to environment, to livelihood. So the idea here is technology is sometimes dangerous to manage. First, people who live in the coastal area need to know that they are not going to be impacted much. That's number one. Two, you're also dealing with environment in terms of pollution, in terms of other things, flooding. So this gives you a sense of what are those. It doesn't forbid projects. That's not the idea. The idea is not to say government can't do what they want to do. The idea is to say government has taken time to think through these things. And this is what they want to do. So it's first scientific. The experts will know that this project has risk. Every major project has a risk. But these risks are manageable. That's one. Two, they talk about health and social impact as well. So people understand this is what this will cost us. But there's also something missing here. There's a cost-benefit analysis. This is what P2B and others are talking about. I mean, are you going to, how much will this produce in terms of economic growth, in terms of well-being, in terms of poverty impact, versus the cost? So for us at the EIA stage, what you're dealing with is the biophysical impact. You're saying this project will have this minimal or heavy impact. But this is how we want to, I'll give an example. If there are cultural shrines, barriers, things that are, by the way, the African Churches people should have a right to those sites which belong to them cultural. They can tell you how they want to divert it. They can tell you how they want to relocate people. So it might be that government has it all this figured out. But what this is saying, make explicit what they are thinking. And the idea, and this is very important, the reason why we have these laws is that Tinubu government may be very competent, get everything right. Somebody else may not be that competent. Umahi may be the best engineer since Plutomy and others, but somebody else might not be. So this is not based on personality. This is based on helping you to get best result with less cost.
All right, I think it's a fine place for us to leave it. As we stay on this, and I still think we should be very careful with how we jump at this and wait for David Umahi to come explain what he means by everything.
I don't think it's a thing
of
explanation.
Just to correct, we're not jumping to it.
Yeah, we're
saying
just discussing
that this is required for it to take off. If he has got
all right, he will come and do all of that clearly. Dr. Sam Amadi is a fine place for us to leave it tonight on Newsline.